I did not kill my husband. He died by his own hand. It was suicide. Myself and George had nothing to do with his death. You have to believe me. I am innocent of this crime.
We centre on the lives of three people. Wealthy grocer Thomas Bartlett and his younger French-born wife Adelaide, and a Wesleyan minister, the Reverend George Dyson. The relationship they had between themselves was odd, and it all culminated with the mysterious death of one of them that occurred in 1886 in the Pimlico area of London. Adelaide de la Tremoille was born in 1855. Her father was rumoured to be a wealthy and possibly even titled member of Queen Victoria's entourage, who had indeed visited France for a number of years. The child is recorded as being born illegitimately in Orléans. Little is known about her early life and upbringing, or when she came to England. Edwin Bartlett and Adelaide were married in 1875, when she was 19 and he was 29. He was a grocer and was quite well off, having a successful business and possessed a religious and metaphysical mind. According to Adelaide, it was intended to be a platonic marriage, but in 1881 she had a stillborn baby by Edwin. He had refused her female nurse's advice to call a male doctor during a difficult labour, because he did not want another man to interfere with her. He came from a close-knit family, and Adelaide seemed to resent the closeness that she had married into. Soon afterwards, she had begun an affair with her brother-in-law. Early in 1885, they met the Reverend George Dyson, as he was the local Wesleyan minister, and he became a frequent visitor. He had a degree from Dublin University, so Edwin invited him to assist Adelaide with her studies, and he became the couple's spiritual counsellor and friend. Edwin made Dyson executor of his will, in which he left his entire estate to Adelaide, on condition that she did not remarry, which was a common stipulation in those days. At a later date, Edwin redrew the will, 4 months before he died, removing the bar on Adelaide remarrying. If the story that finally came out is true, that Adelaide and Dyson told, the minister was encouraged to openly romance Adelaide with Edwin's permission. Edwin was also suffering several unpleasant illnesses, including rotting teeth and possibly tapeworms. He was supposedly something of a faddist, believing in animal magnetism as a key to health, but his reported eccentricities are partly based on what he learnt from Adelaide and Dyson, both of whom may have had reasons to lie. In October 1885, he became ill, and his doctor, Alfred Leach, diagnosed gastritis. Adelaide asked Dyson to get some chloroform that was prescribed by the doctor. Leach would later admit that he prescribed it reluctantly, but at the insistence of his patient. Under the laws of the day regarding purchasing large amounts of potent medical poisons, one had to sign a book at the chemist's as a record, but not if the amounts purchased were small. Dyson had bought 4 small bottles of chloroform instead of 1 large one, and purchased them in several different shops, claiming he needed it to remove stains on his clothes. Only after Edwin's death did Dyson claim to suddenly realise how suspicious his actions were. On New Year's Eve, Edwin returned from a visit to the dentist and went to sleep alongside Adelaide in their Pimlico flat. Just before 4 a.m. the next morning, Adelaide asked their maid to fetch Dr. Leach, fearing Edwin was dead, before rousing the landlady and asked her to come down. I think Mr. Bartlett is dead. Subsequently, doctors found about 1/16 of an ounce of chloroform in the dead man's stomach, and deduced that a large dose must have been swallowed. The intriguing thing was that, although chloroform is a corrosive poison, no traces were found in his mouth or throat, and there was no evidence as to how it got there. It is just possible that the stories of Edwin's alleged suicide might have been believed, and his death considered free of foul play, except that his father, who had always detested Adelaide, and had earlier accused her of having an affair with Edwin's younger brother, became extremely suspicious and persuaded authorities to look into the death. An inquest was called and returned a verdict of wilful murder by Adelaide Bartlett, with George Dyson being an accessory before the fact, and they were both charged with murder and arrested. The coroner tried to have Mrs. Bartlett give evidence at the inquest, because she was not permitted at the time to give sworn evidence on her own behalf at her trial. The trial started on the 12th of April 1886 and attracted a lot of press coverage, both in England and abroad. Charges were read out against both George Dyson and Adelaide, but the prosecution immediately asked for those against Dyson to be dropped, as there was insufficient evidence, and he was formally acquitted. This enabled the prosecution to call him as a witness, but also made it possible for the defence to take advantage of his testimony. Adelaide was extremely fortunate in her choice of her barrister, who was Sir Edward Clarke, possibly the finest barrister of the late Victorian era. He suggested that Edwin had committed suicide, and made this the centre of the defence's argument. Clarke's taking on the case was rumoured to be due to Adelaide's mysterious father's intervention. Adelaide was not able to testify herself, something that was not possible for defendants until the Criminal Evidence Act of 1898 was introduced, and the defence called no witnesses, although Clarke did give a 6-hour closing statement to the court. The Reverend Dyson appeared as a witness against Adelaide. Clarke was able to show sufficient ambiguities against the deceased to make the suicide theory just about possible. His tactics with Dr. Leach and Edwin's father, who was revealed to have been a mercenary and who had an ulterior motive towards his son's estate, and the Reverend Dyson, were sufficient to gain his client an acquittal. It should be pointed out that the prosecution in this classic poisoning case was in the hands, as was traditional in England and Wales until 1957, of the then current Attorney General, Clarke's great rival Sir Charles Russell. The suicide theory gained ground, despite evidence given that on the last evening of his life, Edwin had told his maid to have a sumptuous dinner prepared for him for the next day, which was hardly the action of a man contemplating suicide. The main forensic aid in the accused's favour was that liquid chloroform burns skin. It cannot pass down to the stomach without scalding the sides of the throat and the larynx. Edwin did not have such burns in his body, which suggests that he was actually able somehow to gulp the chloroform down quickly. It bolstered the suicide theory a little, for such rapid drinking suggested that the drinker rushed the poisoned drink down his throat. It was revealed in court that Dyson had bought 4 small bottles of chloroform at the request of Adelaide, but on Edwin's doctor's prescription. In all, he got 4 ounces. Adelaide admitted that she used it, sprinkled on a handkerchief, to help her husband to sleep during the period of his illness. The defence put forward the theory that Edwin had drunk the chloroform to commit suicide, and there was no evidence to show just how the poison had been administered. When the jury returned to court after considering its verdict, the foreman said, "Although we think grave suspicion is attached to the prisoner, we do not think there is sufficient evidence to show how, or by whom, the chloroform was administered." He then confirmed that the verdict was not guilty, which was greeted with applause from the public gallery, opinion having moved in Adelaide's favour during the course of the trial. The issue of how the chloroform got into Edwin's stomach without burning him internally in the throat led the famous surgeon, Sir James Paget, to make his famous quip,
"Now that she has been acquitted for murder and cannot be tried again, she should tell us in the interest of science how she did it."
After the trial, both Adelaide and Dyson disappeared from public view, and what happened to them is not entirely clear. One account is that the couple got married, but there is another one that goes that the two never met again. She may have emigrated to America and settled in Connecticut, where she died in 1933. As for Dyson, some accounts suggest he emigrated to Australia.